My favorite thing about the museum is obviously if you're remotely into roller coasters, you have to come and visit because it is truly the Cooperstown of roller coasters, we'll call it. But we also, we have a bar. The bar is made out of reclaimed wood from Mean Streak. Uh, and I'm not kidding. This is something RMC helped us put together, and the bar stools themselves are coaster wheels you could sit on and spin. So it's just something else. But really, my biggest takeaway is seeing the storytelling in the evolution of technology. There's really no other place where you can walk in a room and you can say, okay, here's the wild mouse section, right? So we start with here's a wild mouse car, say from Herschel or Schiff. There are those inline seating wild mouse cars, right on up to the modern day ones.
Leading a team can feel like a roller coaster. Big climbs, sudden drops, and moments where you wonder why you got on the ride in the first place. Hi, my name is Matt Heller, founder of Performance Optimist Consulting, and I take great pride in helping leaders and teams stay focused and performing at their best. Through engaging keynotes, hands-on workshops, and practical coaching, I help leaders turn fear into confidence and discomfort into momentum. This means fewer breakdowns and more breakthroughs. If your organization is ready to start building real forward motion, it's time to take action and make better performance and growth your main attraction. Visit performanceoptimist.com/attractionpros for an exclusive offer.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you for asking.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. I am actually not going to say what I usually say today.
Okay. It's been hundreds of episodes.
I know, but I was surprised by the homage that our guest did when he came on, and I'm going to let him say it today.
Okay. That's fine with me. Our guest today is Mark Rosenzweig. He is a repeat offender here on the Attraction Pros podcast, but it has been like 8 years since we've had him on. He is the principal and chief business officer of 3dxScenic, which is a fabrication and design company based outside Cincinnati, Ohio. They make a lot of theming and fabrication products that you definitely have seen somewhere throughout the industry, maybe many places throughout the industry.
Absolutely. And I love how Mark talks about the three pillars, not only of his business and how he interacts with his clients, but also the way that the company operates, which are integrity, transparency, and collaboration. And we definitely hear a lot about collaboration today and the work that he's done with many, many different parks and attractions across the globe.
100%. He also talks about stirring imagination and kind of gives some insight into the fact that something like scenic design and theming is not necessarily as cut and dry as many other aspects of the business, and that it requires a little bit of abstract concepting that, you mentioned he talks a lot about collaboration, and this really ties into that to say, okay, what is the project? What is it that we are trying to achieve? And that they're able to really bring to the table many options, many suggestions for what the client is able to do, and then be able to collaborate on them. And maybe they need a specific type of paint based on the type of weather and climate that they're in, and all those really small nuances and details.
Absolutely. One of the other big things that you will definitely definitely hear, if you've never heard Mark speak before, this will be abundantly clear in the first 3 words that he says. He is an ops nerd. And like us, like you and I should say that we are ops nerds as well. And I think if I look back at this recording, there will be probably as much footage before we start the actual episode and after the actual episode as there is in the episode, of just us nerding out about roller coasters and the industry. And so, again, you'll be able to hear this in whatever Mark says and the way he presents himself. And it's just such a fun time talking to him. So super excited to hear about his nerdiness.
Yeah. So should we release an extended version of this episode, a director's cut version of it?
We may have to look at some of the things that were discussed, because some of them may not be ready for the public, but we may get some good extra footage out of it.
Well, in the meantime, should we get to this interview with Mark Rosenzweig?
Absolutely. Let's go.
Hey, Mark, welcome back to the Attraction Pros podcast. We're so excited to have you on today. How are you?
I am fantastic. It is just the best way to start my day, and I'm thrilled to be back with you guys. It's been a while, but happy to be back on your podcast. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, you owe Matt $50 now. Anytime anybody says it, there's a royalty licensing fee on it.
He's my number one Venmo recipient. It's fine. He's right there.
So it's been a while. It's been, I think we were just doing the math, more than 400 episodes since the last time you were here, and since then you moved to Cincinnati. So I think the first question I ask you is, what is the best way to eat Skyline chili?
Believe it or not, well, here's one way that no one knows, or very few people outside of Cincinnati know. You can eat Skyline chili spice inside of ice cream. So Grater's ice cream here in the greater Cincinnati area, if you're familiar, they released a flavor called Skyline Spice, which combines like a cinnamon chili spice flavor profile with crushed up oyster crackers inside of like a sweet cream ice cream, I think, or a cinnamon ice cream, which is, like most Cincinnati food, sounds terrible. It's shockingly delicious. So other than that, my typical is a 4-way with onion, which that is the spaghetti with onion, chili, and cheese. And then depending on if I want to be healthy or not, either a side Greek salad or a cheese coney if I'm going all in.
Oh, there you go. Excellent. Fantastic. Well, it's all the time we have for today, but we appreciate it.
Oh, that was great.
Yeah, that was all we need to know.
That's all we need to know. I like how you said you're going to have a salad if you want to go healthy, because the rest of it is so healthy as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's all 3 food groups, right? Everything but vegetables. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Well, Mark, like Josh said, you moved to Cincinnati. What prompted that move, and what are you doing now?
Yeah, so I've had a long history in the industry, from working at Michigan's Adventure way back when, and then later in sales roles at Zamperla and Ride Entertainment. And just COVID kind of hit, and COVID hit everybody hard, and flipped a lot of our careers on their proverbial heads, let's say. And so I was in a position I needed to look for a new opportunity, and I remember like it was yesterday. It was August of 2020, and I was on the IAPA job board, and you can imagine the pickings were slim, and there were 3 jobs listed. 3 of them were for maintenance positions at theme parks in Abu Dhabi. I don't remember the exact location. And then the 4th one was for an account executive position at a company called 3dxScenic in Blue Ash, Ohio, which is a suburb or just outside of downtown, about 20 miles northeast of downtown Cincinnati. So I went through the process. I actually drove out to meet the team, and I was hired. And I remember too, when I walked in the shop for the first time, they were testing the parade floats for the Cedar Point 150th anniversary parade, which, if you recall, that was to open in 2020, but for obvious reasons did not, and it was pushed to 2021. And as soon as I saw the Gemini floats getting driven through the middle of the shop, I said, okay, I have found my people. I think this is a good fit. So I really enjoyed getting to know the team and the product and the procedures here. And then I had the opportunity, along with Matt Waldenmeyer, who had been with the company for over 20 years. He just passed his 25th anniversary. He started as a carpenter and worked his way up to operations director. And he and I had the opportunity to take over ownership of the company. And so in December of 2023, we both became co-owners of the company. And, you don't plan for a lot of things. You just kind of go with it. But he and I share a lot of the same philosophies and in life and business, and so it's been a great fit so far. It's really, really exciting.
That's amazing. I got to see that parade in 2021 and just thought it was fantastic. I just have my 150th year pennant on my desk here that, as you can see, I've not done anything in my new home office yet. But that's really cool. I like that. These are my people type of moment right here. So then with that, that was definitely not your introduction to the industry. I say almost with a laugh a little bit. So if we could back up a little and tell us just your background, your history in the industry. You talked about Michigan's adventure, and then curious if we can even expand on that. Walk us through.
Yeah, sure. I've always been a believer of get your hands dirty. That's the first thing, is that I kind of believe be a sponge, learn as much as you can. We're all very, very lucky to work in this industry. That's kind of the baseline foundation to everything that I do. As I'm a super fan of the industry and I work in the industry. So I operations and park services at Michigan's Adventure, and then moved back to where I'm from, the New York City metro area, and was hired by Zamperla, and I did sales and marketing for them for about 7 years. And then I moved to Baltimore, Maryland, as a member of the team at Ride Entertainment. Ride Entertainment is a multifaceted group. They do ride sales, they do revenue shares, they do ride installations, park operations. So I was able to really dig in and really kind of touch a little bit of everything, which was great for me in building my skill set and getting out of my comfort zone, which I think is very important. And probably my favorite role there, which is I think is what I was doing when I was last on this podcast, was running the SkyCoaster division from about 2014 to 2018. So I made so many friends in the industry, and as you guys know, when you get into the parks and the operations side, it really is subcultures inside of subcultures a lot of times, as I like to say it. So, that just kind of sent me here. So I am the lone Baltimore Ravens fan in Cincinnati, and after the way last night's game ended, I may give up that title also. So we'll see.
Well, Mark, you mentioned you and Matt's opportunity to take over ownership of 3dxScenic, and I can't imagine that was a small endeavor nor a easy decision. So I'm curious if you can kind of walk us through kind of how you made that decision to say, yes, we're going to go ahead and do this, and then some of the things you've learned along the way.
Sure. I've heard someone tell me once, all great decisions are made over a beer. And when the opportunity came up, we kind of talked to each other in the shop. I remember the day, and just said, let's meet at this brewery here in Cincinnati. And we sat down and we kind of walked through. Matt is the master craftsman. He can come up with methodologies and put budgets together and all that. And I am more on the marketing and sales side. So it just feels like, although I'm not a huge fan of silos in general, strictly silos, it felt like a good mix where we have the business development arm and we have the fabrication and methodology arm. And you put those together, and that's really what you need for a successful fabrication shop. So another thing is just the philosophy piece. We have 3 pillars that we believe 150% in. Those are collaboration, integrity, and transparency. And just walking through those, I mean, integrity is pretty much what you would think it is. You be who you are, be upfront. When you're talking to a client, you're walking through a project, walk through the schedules, walk through what types of what parts of that project will be subcontracted. There's no surprises. We're not hiding anything. We're having integrity with that. The transparency leads into that as well. So, I mean, you walk through what kind of methodologies are we going to use. We want to let people understand this is our bandwidth. We can hit your schedule. We're very much yes if people. So we want to take projects on yes if the budget is X, or yes if the schedule allows for it. We're not a company that's going to take on a project if we know we cannot hit that date. Even if it's one of those, take it, we'll figure it out later. That's not really our MO. That's not how we operate, because we look at each opportunity with a client not as one job or one project, but 5 jobs, 5 projects over the course of 10 years. We want to be sustainable, and we want to grow. And I would say collaboration is probably the one I get up on the hill and yell the most about. That is the one that, in whether it's personal or professional, we believe collaboration leads to successful projects. when we walk through a project with a client and we talk about where is this going to live? Is it going to be indoors, outdoors? Are guests going to touch it? How long does it need to last? We want to have that collaborative approach to each project, so that there are little to no surprises at the end. That's really the goal, is no surprises. We like white glove treatment and doing all that. And I'll kind of close this with saying that those three pillars are not just between us and our clients and vendors, but they're between ownership here at 3DX and our employees. We treat everybody the same way. There's no other way to do it.
Mark, I'm curious, kind of going back to maybe the transition a little bit from from Ride Entertainment in COVID to 3DX. You talked about visiting the shop and being able to see it, but curious a little bit more if we can go deeper into what that transition was like for you. Still very much within the same industry, but definitely a very different product. I'm guessing there were a lot of similar aspects from the sales standpoint, the business development standpoint, than that you were used to working for kind of the ride manufacturers and SkyCoaster. But curious as far as what was the learning curve like for you of entering kind of a little bit of a new territory?
Yeah, so theming in general, whether it's a portal, a sign, a parade float, a sculpture, they're normally the pieces that fill out an area. So when a park has a CapEx budget for a new ride and they're filling out that area, a lot of times, not all the time, but the theming budget is the last budget to get budgeted and the first budget to get cut, if a project should go over. So it's kind of understanding that process. And really kind of, you're working with different people. So in the past, when you're working on ride projects, you're generally dealing with executives at a corporate office or the ownership of a park. It could be an operations director. It could be the general manager. When you're dealing with more of the scenic end of stuff, you're more in the creative design. You're working with entertainment directors. So it's sort of like counterparts, or I should say colleagues of the people I used to work with. But a lot of times, it kind of does all get lumped together, because you have rides that the queue line is integral to telling a story. So, you have to kind of work through that. And, then it's sort of like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, as they call it. But we're here to help. We want to be collaborators. So we also see ourselves as problem solvers. So we don't shy away from a challenge. In fact, we step up to it, and we want to offer ourselves, because we feel like that's one of the things that separates us from some other shops. I think most shops consider themselves problem solvers, but we want to take that weight or concern off of our client's plate, take that on ourselves, and deliver a product that really meets the demand of the project.
So, Mark, you talk about collaboration, and let me back up just for a second, because I got to visit the old shop a couple of years ago, and it was fascinating to walk through there and see all the different stages of products that were in development. But can you talk a little bit about sort of that initial meeting? Maybe there's an idea from a client all the way through to here it is, here's that piece. Obviously, we don't have time to go through every single detail, but just give us an idea of what that process might look like for a piece of scenic that you're creating.
Sure. And I think one really good one to use as an example would be the roller coaster that we did the theming for at Holiday World, called Good Gravy, which was a Vekoma family boomerang, a custom layout that got installed last year, or 2 years ago. I say last year, now 2024. So the ride went in the Thanksgiving area, and they had the name picked out, and very tongue-in-cheek, humorous, and the train design is ingenious. It looks like a gravy boat. I think the team at Vekoma had to do a lot of research on that, because I don't think gravy boats are a thing in the Netherlands, but nonetheless, I think they knocked it out of the park with the train design. So, they had this big building, and they wanted to, basically you're walking through a family's house on your way to the station. So they have that story told. Now, the next step was, what are we going to do to fill out the area and also add more to the ride experience? So it was decided by the park that we want to do some oversized icons of Thanksgiving sculpturally. And so this was going back to IAPA, I want to say 2022, we started talking to them. And so we went through, it was a really fun, we do these creative back and forths, with our team, if we have to bring in third-party creative sometimes, or we can use our team to just kind of spitball ideas, essentially. And so we came up with a deck. I believe it was about 10 concepts, and they wound up going with 5 of them. I think their plan was to go to 5. And so they picked the 5, and one of them was the stuffing box, which is the only sculpture that sits kind of It's not really accessible to guests. It's often like a little infield on the grass. The thing about the stuffing boxes, it's Ruth Stuffing. The name Ruth, that's the person who is from the Evansville, Indiana area who came up with a stovetop stuffing recipe. So again, we're kind of weaving in more story and Easter eggs and all that into it. And then, yeah, I mean, the Holiday World team, just an example of family-owned park. They love doing creative things. They love doing things outside the box. And then they also came out to our shop twice during production to film videos that they would then share on their social channels. I think they call them the Hard Hat Chronicles. And our charge scenic artist, Rachel here, did a fantastic job in those. She ran that project and also was interviewed twice for that. So kind of they were able to tell the story of how these came to life. But again, the collaboration of that, they wound up with 5 iconic structures and the chicken timer, and I actually have one sitting right here on my desk. They actually made a plush toy out of. So you can see the Holiday World logo on the back. And so this is about a 5.5 foot tall sculpt at the park that you could take your photo with, and they sell plush toys of. So, it's, you talk about, I always say indirect return on investment on scenic elements, but there you have a direct return on investment.
Yeah, kind of the connective tissue between here's the fabrication, the scenic, the theming. There's the ride, that's the marketable asset of it, and then the plush kind of all really just being very, very cohesive, all just being one story that's being told.
Yeah.
Mark, you've said that 3dxScenic sells an abstract product, and that sometimes requires you to stir the client's imagination. So I'm guessing the story you just shared about Holiday World is probably a good example of that. But I wonder if we could delve into that a little bit deeper.
Sure. A lot. It's not always easy to sell abstract decor to a someone that say is in finance, right? Because if you look at, I'll use the example of the giant carousel horses, which we claim to be the largest in the world, the ones at the entrance of Lake Compounce and Kennywood, that were installed back in 2021 and 2022, respectively. We're saying that they're world's largest until someone contests that, and no one's stepped forward yet. So the thing is, do those sculptures directly drive the gate at the park? Maybe not. I don't know, to be honest with you. But do those sculptures drive indirect results because people are taking selfies with the park name behind the sculpture and sharing them on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and all these platforms? Absolutely. And, they become these iconic photo ops, essentially, unintentionally, because it's a sculpture. It's trying to kind of tell the story of what you're about to experience. So at Kennywood and Lake Compounce are 2 classic trolley parks, and that's what you're experiencing is an old style amusement park. So indirectly, they're also getting that return when people are taking their photo every year with it as well. And it becomes, oh, look at little Timmy now. He grew, so much in the last 3 years, and here's his photo in front of the same carousel. And I think there's examples of these photo ops all throughout attractions that we know of, that are iconic, whether it's the pretzel at Dutch Wonderland or, any of these type of things. So, yeah, it's sometimes hard to sell the abstract, but when you have results like that, it becomes a little easier. And I think as we get on and on here that, especially in America, where theming, once you get outside of the Orlando and Southern California markets, was never a real true priority. I think you have like Silver Dollar City and Dollywood are examples of parks that do take that extra step towards immersive theming. But I think in recent years, if you look at Six Flags parks, pretty much all these parks, theming has really become an important thing. And I'm really thrilled to see that happening as we move forward.
Well, and I would, excuse me, imagine too, Mark, that sometimes you're selling what isn't even created yet. Like you talked about the process with Holiday World, where you presented them with your ideas, and they're like, well, we want something, but we don't know what. So there's that creative process you talked about, the collaborative process that you talked about. Have there ever been times when either you've just kind of blown away the client and they said, yes, we want to do everything, or versus the other way is, you didn't really hear what we had to say. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing, like maybe not even being on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, there are times, but to be honest with you, Matt, most of the time we're presented with the concept, and then it's really on our side. I'm a 1980s kid, so I call it, if you remember, the masters of the universe. We're the masters of methodology. So once we know the parameters of a project, again, going back to, is it indoors, outdoors? Does it need to have fire retardant paint on it? How long does it need to last? We can then really knock it out of the park and come up with a methodology that will meet the demand of it. A great example last year, we did a huge pirate ship facade for Playland's Castaway Cove in Ocean City, New Jersey. This park has been on the boardwalk for a long decades and decades and decades, and they had a tragic fire back in I want to say it was 2022 or 2021 that consumed the arcade building and the pirate ship. Well, it was on their list to replace that pirate ship. Again, it's not something that drives ticket sales, but it's an iconic piece that people missed, and all the guest surveys were requesting the pirate ship. So we went through a creative exchange with the owner, Scott Simpson, who's a fantastic guy, very hands-on, knows the ride side and the park and everything inside and out. And in less than, I would say, 2 to 3 weeks, we had a final approved design. You're just going back and forth, and he had input, again, going back to collaboration. He had input on the type of paint to use, because you're talking Ocean City up on a arcade roof. You've got UV rays, you've got salt air, you've got nor'easters, you've got all that. And, he knows what paint is going to work and doesn't work, because guess what? He operates an amusement park in that environment. So, having that feedback and that collaboration with him was fantastic. And the end result, I think the project hit it out of the park. He's thrilled with it. The guests are thrilled with it. So I think that's a really good example of a large scale project that everybody wins.
So you talk about Pirate Ship in Ocean City, you talk about Good Gravy at Holiday World, and the scenic design around that, the carousel horses at Lake Compounds. What are some of 3dxScenic's flagship projects?
So I would say our largest project in our company's history was being the main scenic provider for the rebranding of Aquatica in San Diego, which became Sesame Place San Diego. So if anyone's familiar with the park in Langhorne, Pennsylvania, which opened in the early 80s, just iconic, utilizing the Sesame Workshop IP. And United Parks wanted to bring that brand, full-fledged to Southern California, because you've got Legoland California up in Carlsbad that's been doing, very well since it opened in the late 90s. And so we were brought in and we did all of the neighborhood facades. So we basically, the closest thing I can compare it to, if you're a Potter fan, is going through Hogsmeade at Universal Studios Hollywood or Islands of Adventure, where it truly is like you're in a movie set, because all of the familiar landmarks are in the same location they would be in the film. So you've got Hooper's Store, which is a practical building. You can walk in, it's a retail shop. You've got Big Bird's Nest sitting out on the street, where 4 or 5 times a day, Big Bird character comes out for a meet and greet and story time with the kids. And then in addition to those facades, we did about a dozen character sculpts around the park. We did some signage. We did what's called the wave wall, which is the big decor behind the wave pool. When you look at the wave pool from where guests enter. And it was, that was a 2-year project. I mean, a big job. And it's just amazing to me. When you go to the park today, you would never know it was Aquatica. And even the year it opened, they did such a seamless job of converting that park into what was, a very well done. But let's face it, there's a lot of tropical themed water parks. I think that's one of the most popular themes for water parks. And now it's truly an iconic destination for families with kids in that 2 to 8, 9-year-old demographic. So they have something that can compete with Legoland. Another signature project we're in the midst of right now. We're currently fabricating a 48-foot tall German nutcracker sculpt. And I say that with a straight face, because some of the things we do, I sometimes can't believe. But we're working with the fine folks at Lagoon Amusement Park in Farmington, Utah, right outside of Salt Lake City. A fantastic team to work with. Mainly, we've been working with Dustin and Adam and Jimmy and Julie, and it just an amazing team there. So welcoming and collaborative, and they're doing this new S&S Screaming Swing, one of those 100, I think it's a 100-foot tall model, if I'm not mistaken, and it's being raised up off the ground. It'll have 40 seats, and one of the air tanks will be clad with this German nutcracker, just as a thematic prop. So again, going back to that, North American parks putting more stock in theming and storytelling. They didn't have to do this. It's just something that they didn't like the way the air tank looked. So we're going to clad it with a German nutcracker. I mean, that's not something you normally talk about in a business plan, I don't think.
Not unless you work in this industry, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Mark, I'd love to switch gears just for a minute and talk about something that we all have a passion about, and that's roller coasters and your appointment to the board of directors for the Roller Coaster Museum. Can you tell us a little bit about that appointment? And if people haven't heard about the Roller Coaster Museum, what can they expect there?
Yeah, so National Roller Coaster Museum and Archives. I'm thrilled to be invited to the board of directors back in late 2024. I joined the board along with my good friend Chris Roberry, and it's just having new blood on the board, and we're getting very close. We're going to get this across the finish line. We don't have a final opening date yet, but we have released a number of events for the 2025 six calendar. I'm still in 2025, and they're available. You can check them out on the Facebook page and other social pages for the museum. It really is a thrill. I have been a super fan of the industry from the age of 2. And so to be a part of this and to be on the team that's going to see it across the finish line is beyond an honor for me. And I think I was telling Josh previously that my favorite thing about the museum is obviously if you're remotely into roller coasters, you have to come and visit because it is truly the Cooperstown of roller coasters, we'll call it. But we also, we have a bar. The bar is made out of reclaimed wood from Mean Streak. Uh, and I'm not kidding. This is something RMC helped us put together, and the bar stools themselves are coaster wheels you could sit on and spin. So it's just something else. But really, my biggest takeaway is seeing the storytelling in the evolution of technology. There's really no other place where you can walk in a room and you can say, okay, here's the Wild Mouse section, right? So we start with here's a Wild Mouse car, say from Herschel or Schiff. There are those inline seating Wild Mouse cars right on up to the modern day ones. We have a coach from it was called Wild Izzy at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and then it moved to Busch Gardens Tampa, where it was last known as Sand Serpent, and it was retired a year or two ago. And so you have that evolution of this is how this. It's a very simple car. It's a 4-passenger coach, right? But you can watch and see. And then we've got several scenic railway vehicles that predate the upstop wheel by many decades. The upstop wheel, most people don't realize, is just over 100 years old. That when John Miller came out with that innovation. Prior to that, you had a lot of these scenic railways with onboard brakemen, and it was a different type of thing. The extreme airtime was not a thing because the whole train would get airtime. So you have to think back, and I think it gives greater appreciation. Because the industry and roller coasters and it really is. It's a piece of true American culture, right? And we all have memories from it, whether it's us or our kids or family or whatnot. You're riding these wonderful machines, and to see it all brought together and in a way that the museum does, I think everyone remotely a fan of the industry should really go see it. We've hosted park groups as well. We had the small park group. A bunch of small park owners were out there last fall. They got to see it for the first time. So I mean that's a whole other opportunity, for development there and getting more exposure out there. And even European parks have donated. We have a coach from Eurosat at Europa Park. We have one of the original scenic railway coaches from the Bakken Scenic Railway because it now runs trains from Comeback. So it's a who's who of roller coasters, essentially, if roller coasters were a living thing. But either way, it's worth seeing no matter what.
To your point of anyone who's remotely a fan of roller coasters in the industry should check it out. What about people who maybe aren't, who maybe have more of a passive interest in the industry? Is this something they would still have an enjoyable experience at?
I would say yes, because it's such a niche topic that, the closest thing I can compare it to would be these carousel museums, of which there's probably 5 or 6 notable ones across the country. I know there's one in Bristol, Connecticut, the New England, and then there's one in Sandusky near Cedar Point. But I think the key difference and why we were having this conversation, why are there so many carousel museums, and yet this is the first roller coaster museum? Carousel horses, at least the old style ones, they became over time a division of art. It was American folk art, essentially. And I don't know that many people put roller coasters in the category of art, although I think the three of us would. Whether you're looking at the design, everything's intentional, right? When you look at a wooden roller coaster and the lattice structure and all that, it's not just the quickest, cheapest way to support the thing. It's also, how's it going to look? You don't want this big, boxy, ugly looking thing dominating the midway. You want it to complement what's there. So, there is an art form for sure with roller coaster design.
Mark, I'm curious, and this is not something we plan to ask, but many of our questions are not. Um, where does your passion for the industry come from?
Um, the foundation of it comes from my grandparents. So I was 2 years old growing up on Long Island in Nassau County, and they brought me to a small children's park called Nunley's, which was one of many of those baby boomer parks. It no longer exists, but they blew up all across the country in the 40s and 50s, I would say. And so they put me on the carousel, and I was just fascinated from that day, and kind of everything went from there. But I think ultimately, though, as I get older and have been so fortunate to work in the industry, it's seeing the result of projects. And I know so many people say the same thing, but it's true. It's right. You put your blood, sweat, and tears into a project, and then you get to go to an opening day, and you get to stand at the exit of a ride, or watching a parade go by, and knowing all the long hours and all the struggles and all the collaboration, and good, bad, and different, but seeing that result and watching everyone clapping and cheering and having fun, and that's what drives us all. I mean, otherwise we'd just be crazy people, I think.
And you've said that we can never lose sight of the fact that we have let our passion and integrity, so going back to the message of integrity, guide us to success. And it sounds like the way that you just described just your passion for the industry, that's very intertwined.
Yeah, and I think I said this to both of you during the expo this year, is that we have to take a deep breath and look around and realize how lucky we are, because people go to college to get a degree. It could be in accounting, go to trade school and get a certification and be an electrician, and it's great if you're happy with your role. And a lot of people go in and get a job because they want to get an ROI on their degree. We're all kind of doing that, but we're doing it in the themed entertainment industry. How cool is that?
I remember I might have been the one or two times I saw you. I didn't see you much this IAPA, but I saw you at the Epic event, and you came up to me and you gave me a hug and you said, "We're doing this." And it gives me goosebumps to think about it now because, and at the time, because you're right, like we have turned this crazy passion, you from a youngster on a carousel, me starting my first job as a ride operator, same with Josh, like we've turned this into some kind of career that we're actually able to sustain our lives and sustain our families, and it's really quite amazing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it's sort of how I've always approached my professional career is also, when you're passionate about something, that usually comes with it a deep knowledge base of something. And so it's important. And I pass this along to, people entering the industry, is to try not to always be the smartest person in the room, be humble, and, engage in conversation, whether it's a client or a new contact or, a boss or whatnot. And, just be humble and be professional, get your hands dirty and work hard and try as many things. And I think the three of us are results of that. You can see it, like we all started as ride operators, and here we are, and we can probably go back to being ride operators, but this is fun too.
Yeah. Speaking of starting as a ride operator, you started your career at Michigan's Adventure, which very recently became my new home park, and now live in Western Michigan. What are some lessons that you learned early in your career you still find relevant today?
Yeah, so it really goes back to that getting your hands dirty, aspect of it, and never being above doing something. So, I jumped at the opportunity to do park services, which if people aren't familiar, that's cleaning toilets, it's emptying I wanted to learn. I'm an operations nerd at heart, and I wanted to learn how is that scheduled? How is that budgeted? How many people do we need, based on what the projected attendance is going to be. So, I was able to get in that. I did ride operations. I was on the team that opened Shivering Timbers. So I don't know if that ages me at all, but that was 1998. And, it just, did a little bit of the food service side of things, just really tried everything. And, I really feel like that set me up for success. That one summer that I worked there and just worked 6, 7 days a week willingly, because then I had a different perspective, understanding that, okay, it's not just about knowing everything. It's about learning. It's about communication. It's about all the three hallmarks I just mentioned. I think I've had them in me from when I first came in the industry, just understanding that everyone comes from a different background, and just because you think you know everything doesn't necessarily make you better or smarter. It's kind of doing that balance, and that's a relationship thing where you give and take and grow from that.
So, Mark, of all of your professional accomplishments and the things that you've achieved over the years, I think there's one, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, that stands above all of those, which is the official Coaster NerdCon Kings Island tour guide. You have fulfilled this role incredibly well a couple of times when myself and my coaster nerds have come to Kings Island, and I just want to know what does that mean to you? What kind of emotions does that stir in you to be part of such an amazing lexicon?
Well, it caught me off guard, Matt, because I thought I was the CNC intern, and I was notified by one of your agents before we got on the air here that I was promoted. So I don't really have words yet, but I will say that carrying all of your gear while you rode and you standing at the exit waiting for you really helped me build biceps. So I think that was a really positive thing from a physical perspective, and just knowing my role as you'd say, but. It's the greatest honor. I mean, I don't know how it can get any better. In fact, I'm looking into retirement options at this point.
Does CNC offer a retirement plan? Do you have a 401k?
No.
No.
There's no retiring from CNC.
Thanks for putting him on the spot. That was great.
Right?
So Mark, we're starting to run low-ish on time. I don't know. I like to throw my ishes around anywhere I can to be not definitive or conclusive. But one thing that we do want to ask you about, you talked about moving into the new shop, the new office very recently, and you've just completed that move. And just wonder if you could talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So from December of 2023 through this past New Year's Eve, 3dxScenic operated in our older shop. We were subleasing space from our former ownership group that, it worked out to ride out the end of that lease together. And we were able to find a building just a half mile down the road here in Blue Ash. So it was perfect, easy as a move can be. As anyone knows that has moved a company, it is not easy, but better to do a half mile move than a 30-mile move. We're in a new 30,000 square foot facility, and using that collaborative word again, Matt and I felt it very important to have each department, whether that's scenic fabrication, scenic paint, composites, which is our fiberglass department, our CNC department. Everybody had a say as to where various equipment would be placed. So we went through many iterations of the layout of the shop. And the nice thing about the building, the space is a long rectangle and it has a dividing wall down the middle. So we've got, and a dividing wall sideways. So we've got quadrants. So for the first time, all four of our key departments has four walls, essentially, which is great. And it also allows for more effective workflow. So a project, when it comes on the floor, it can kind of move through phases. Whereas our old shop, Matt, as you saw it was one big open space. And while generally we were able to make that work when we did the 30 or so parade floats for United Parks back in 2018-19 for the Sesame Street party parades, you could not get across the floor because things were in the way. And what we do is very much like a dance. You have to plan 3-4 steps in ahead, or else you're just going to step on your own toes and the whole project freezes up. Because if you're late one day in one department, then that could be 3 days late when it gets to paint. So we needed to lay this out in an effective manner. So Matt really did a great job laying it out, and then we kind of put it in front of everybody. Everyone had a say, and we were able to go from there. But this really kind of springs 3DX into our future. Essentially, now we have a space that we can grow in. We could take on projects of all sizes, and it's great. We're right down the road, so all of our employees are able to, we're not moving 100 miles away, so we're able to retain the same team, and everybody's super excited about it. So actually, as of today, as we're recording this, our first day full time in the new building. So it's great timing, and here's to a successful future for us all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cheers to making that move and designing the building so it can be really, really efficient for everybody. I am curious, though, kind of going back to that collaboration and the process, when you talked about getting everybody's input, I would imagine that there were certain people that had, ideas of, hey, this would be great for this, or this would be great for that. And then eventually you had to kind of work through those, all those different thoughts to come up with the final design, just like you would for any collaborative project. So it was a bit of a microcosm internally that you are already doing externally with your guests. So I don't know if there's a real question in there, but just an observation of that process that you had to go through.
Yeah, and I think it's muscle memory, Matt. I mean, that's how we approach everything without even thinking about it, because ultimately, Matt and I are typically not the ones out on the floor operating. We're not the ones building. Matt does sometimes. I'm not allowed to operate power tools. That's in my agreement. But nonetheless, they're the ones that can map out a department and really kind of dictate to us like this is the most effective way. Now, most of our large scale equipment, like our KUKA 7-axis robot, our flatbed routers, they take up a lot of space. So there's only so many ways you can kind of maneuver those pieces of equipment. But relative to the rest of that department, where do we put, restoring plywood here? What's the best way relative to the location of one of our docks? Like, how are we going to get things in and out? Those type of things. So it's like anything else. And we really, we preach it is that always think 3-4 steps ahead when you're doing something, so that when you're done with a task, you can move to the next task without having to backtrack to move something somewhere else. So it's a lot of that. Fortunately, we have some of our team members have been here 10, 15, 20 years. So we have team members here that are now mentoring our new team members, which is great, because everyone has kind of bought into our corporate mission and openness, and how we want everyone to have a voice here. So
nice. Amazing. Mark, this has been just such a great opportunity to be able to catch up with you in a very wide-ranging conversation, just covering a lot here, which is so great, including Skyline Chili. If people want to learn more about 3dxScenic, or if they want to get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
yeah, sure. Our website is 3dxscenic.com. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. And then my email is markr@3dxscenic.com. Anyone in the industry, if you're visiting Cincinnati or you're already in Cincinnati, reach out. Our doors pretty much always open. We love to give tours and meet new potential partners, clients, what have you. I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to grow and be sustainable. So, we're really looking forward to a successful 26 and beyond.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you, Mark, again for your time today. It's always great to catch up and hear what's going on with you. So really appreciate your time. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.